So first things first, I've got to get this board out of the way, because this board is actually, ignore the mess, it's going to go in this gap here. It's the right size. So I figured that's going to be my sort of work area, and that means I can put scenery, or where my work area is here, which will look a bit nicer in that area. I have got the wood to make the new baseboards for this part. So I don't know if I've mentioned it previously, but where the inclines come down, them roads are going to carry on, and there's going to be a head shunt going along here so you can get back into the yard. But there's also going to be an incline going down and under here, so it's going to snake inwards. So we're going to have a straight baseboard here with obviously the centre cut out. So what I'll do is I'll get the multi-tool and I'll cut the track bed out before obviously the end, and I'll have a step down piece. Then it will come under and in here through a bridge or a tunnel, whatever. And the head shunt will continue on up to sort of about here-ish, because the board is going to come out to this point. So it's going to be like that, but the head shunt obviously will be just up towards the end, maybe some bushes, something like that, to continue the scenery on. So I need to get that out of the way and then start making the new board up. So you can see the new baseboard for over in this corner taking shape now. I've used 12mm ply sides, and obviously for the supports, and then it's a 9mm ply top. You'll notice that one of the supports is up the other way. There is a good reason for this, because if you remember, the idea is that the main line will continue to drop and will eventually come under the lift out section, and there'll be a loop around here, a reverse loop, so I can send something down the incline and back again. So the reason for that is because the board is going to go with this end against that wall. This baseboard is going to drop down, like the track bed, sorry, is going to curve down. So obviously if I have one of these supports here, I'm going to have to cut the whole thing out anyway for the baseboard to sit on. So what I thought I would do is put a support sideways like this, and that piece of the baseboard will pretty much be sat almost against that by the time the incline has come down enough. It'll be just a little bit off that, but I'm thinking I'll go down, get it where I want it, and then I'll put some packing underneath and screw it all in that way. Obviously these ones I might have to notch a little bit out of, but I figured they would have enough meat left over to still be worthwhile having in this position. It'll probably be sort of notched out to probably somewhere here, which would obviously be plenty. But if you look, I've got a 59 here. That fits in there with room to spare for track and stuff. So I have got enough play there if needs be by the time the track bed is down at that level and you've got track on, which means that it should fit under a bridge area here if I put one in. So the reason I haven't fixed this in is because this is just a temporary piece just to keep it in the right position. And I'm going to make one of these that actually is deeper, so it'll be down here somewhere for that piece of ply to sit on, so that it's deep enough to have the notch out, because it'll be down here somewhere, and then it'll have something going over the top as well, hopefully. But in any case, it's the first time I've made any sort of open frame baseboards like this, so I'm quite pleased with myself. You can see this ply is too big, so I've screwed all this side in, and it's screwed in along here. So now it's pretty solid. It doesn't really, obviously it can come away this side because I've not screwed this side in. But what I'm going to do now is get the circular saw and go down this edge. It doesn't need to be perfect because I can come along and sand it if needs be. But I'm also going to leave a bit overlapping here. That's because I want to do what I've done in this area with a sort of triangle piece. The same thing is that this is a separate piece and it was a bit of a faff. Now the frame here will be a separate piece, but I'm thinking for the top board, I'll include it in the top board instead, and then I'll just brace from there. So I think that would work better. So that's going to come to here somewhere, and either I might curve it round rather than just do it straight, but I'm not 100% yet. But I'll probably have to do that with the multi-tool just so you can get the curve on it. So we'll sort of see how it goes, really. That's the board cut out then. I decided in the end to go with straight lines, purely for the fact that if I'm going to brace it, it's going to be a nightmare to brace if it's curved. So I've gone straight across, and then I've also put another little slightly different angle piece on just to lead it around a bit more. Even though the track will probably be over here somewhere, it just helps it look a bit more smooth and helps the scenery sort of lead in and stuff like that. So that should be pretty good. Again, it's going to be twisted the other way around and go right in that corner. That should work quite nicely. So the first board is now chucked in place just with a couple screws to hold it there. I've now got a 4 foot long piece for another baseboard top. You can see I've taken that half a brake spear out, and I've just laid this over the top. So this will be the shape. So this will come to here, this level. However, I need to, of course, cut this baseboard because it also needs to drop down. So this is going to be a very difficult board to make. I'm not sure how on earth I'm going to manage to do this. Obviously, I'm going to make use of a brace under here to get the level. But this is going to be an absolute pain in the backside. I really need to have a think about what I'm going to do here. I'll probably put the other board back on top, just lay it on top just to get the line. But yeah, this is going to be a mess. So the general thinking is I'll get the multi-tool and I'll cut the track bed out of this one. So this will be going down, and then from here, the baseboard will obviously be in 2 levels, this one. So the main track bed down can continue on, snake inwards, and then go underneath, while this bit stays as high as it is at the minute. So I've cut this board part of the way anyhow, for now, and I've made the new track bed for this piece. You see it's all boxed in. It's a bit of a pain to do because the 12mm ply for the sides has to curve, and being so thick it really doesn't want to. So it took absolutely ages to do this, and obviously it all needs cleaning up with the sander. But that is pretty decent. I'm happy with that. The big challenge is going to be actually getting enough of a decline in so that the stock will get back up. So this isn't the problem, because what I will do is I will actually cut this out, and I'll probably brace up from this to sort of do all that. So that's all like sort of one solid board, and this will then obviously support the top of here, and then that will in turn support the top level of the layout. Obviously it needs to drop down a lot more because you ain't going to fit a loco through that small gap. But it will drop down a lot more than that. I say it's just a case of working out the incline and sort of seeing what's best. I have got the extra pieces that will go in. So this one will go here, and eventually will sit flush like that. And then I do have the other smaller piece, which is just here. So much the same, that will sit there. And then again, once I've got the height determined, I can get some more ply, come up the side, and then that'll all screw in there, and it'll basically make it one big baseboard. Of course, this will sit around here, because this is actually slightly too long, so don't overly worry about that. So I've got the trolley jack in here. You'll have to excuse the mess, it's an absolute bomb site in there. The trolley jack's in just to give us an idea, and I've put a batten across here at the level where I want the baseboard to come through. So this will obviously need removing, that's fine. So what I'll do is I will instead probably triangulate that down here, or I'll leave that in place and actually use some ply to just go across. So there's basically just that would probably look better actually. So just apply square, and then this sort of slots in the center of it. That'd actually be a bit of a nicer idea, and it would make that look a bit better. But as you can see, obviously it rests on here. So yeah, that won't be a problem. Gives us plenty of space underneath here as well, because obviously I can't cut this out because this is what supports the lift out section. So that has to stay complete. So going that way, this is only a 1%, is it 1%? Sorry, no, 1 degree climb. So I used, I don't know if you're aware, but on an iPhone, there's a measuring app, and it's actually very good. Comes in handy, but I used it on the incline over there in the distance. So I put it across this bit, and that's 2 degrees. Went up here, that's 2 degrees, and it very, very briefly goes to 3 degrees, just a touch in where the curve starts. So this being 1 degree at the minute is no problem at all. And you can see there, we'll just have enough clearance. So as I said before, I think the plan is to notch this out. So there'll be a gap in this section basically, and this section will then be supported by this piece. So the whole thing is going to be one big board basically, and it's all going to be sort of self-supporting. So there will just be enough room for locos to squeeze under there with the tunnel mouth, and obviously I'll build that into the surrounding structure. So I probably won't put the tunnel mouth on here because this board, I don't want to screw anything into here because obviously this is an exhibition board. So you'll have to have a good think. I might put the tunnel mouth here somewhere so it's a bit staggered, and then inside the tunnel it actually gets very tight. But yeah, this bit I probably won't see in the kit, but then again, you know what I'm like, I might well do. So we'll see. But yeah, it means that I don't have to come as far down with this as I thought. I was getting a bit worried because of where the incline would have to start. It was only sort of up there, so I wasn't going to have that much space. However, this can come up a little bit more to make it 2%, 2 degrees. I keep getting confused. I think it's 2 degrees, yeah. So that I could bring this up slightly more to again soften the blow there. But I think we should just about get away with this. I did originally think that the baseboard level would have to be down here somewhere to get me underneath. So I'm glad it hasn't got to be the case. So yeah, a lot more cutting, swearing, measuring, and hopefully we'll have something to show for it soon. So a bit more progress then. You can see that this area's got some ply over it now. First thing I did is I fitted some vertical supports and I shaped them to allow this to be a snug fit. So that means that it can slide in and out, however it doesn't really move around. So I'm pretty pleased with that, it's nice and tight. And I've also chopped down the board here and put the end on. So I see this needed a different sized end piece just to rest on here. Unfortunately, I got the measurement slightly wrong by about 1 mil. So underneath I've actually used some plastic card just to raise this up. End of the day, I'm only human. measure once, cut 3 times and all that. But you can see here with this in place, it all fits nicely. There is obviously a gap. That is because this naturally is a straight end, but because the board is angled, you're going to have a gap at the top because this is flat. So this sits at 90 degrees compared to the floor, but this doesn't, obviously, because it's got a 1 degree or 2, sorry, a 2% incline on it. So naturally we've got a bit of a gap there. It's no problem. All I'll do is when I come to fit track, I'll probably put something across the join so that won't cause us any issues. But yeah, got the end piece on, that's all good. Cut out some of the supports underneath so that can drop down more, and it now sits nicely. It's all kind of straight, which is good. The spirit level sits flat along the whole length of it. You can see under here again, with that in, we've now got the final position here, and it just so happens that if I make another little 12mm section, so I've got a 12mm block here, then that will sit flush against the end. So that'll be nice. So I'll probably make a little piece to go like this, so that when the bridge section comes down, it's got a little bit more support, which is the reason I left these on in the first place. But if I can do it with another piece in the middle as well, then happy days, it's even better. But yeah, I think that looks really good. You'll notice that it does stick out a little more than the actual edge of the top level baseboard. That is because I've worked all this out, and I don't think realistically this is going to be completely long enough for the trains I want to run. I think it's going to be a wagon or 2 short. So just in case, I'm leaving this slightly longer so that if I want, I can build a small removable extension to the head shunt on. So rather than chop it down there and then try and add a piece later and it looked like a afterthought, I'm doing it now, and we'll basically leave it until all the track is in, or we can at least mock it up this end, put all the track in, and then get a loco and get some wagons and put it down there and basically see if it fits in the head shunt. If it doesn't, we'll extend that slightly with a little removable piece for when no one's in here, because I of course have the option of fitting it to the lift out piece so that it also hinges back with everything else. If it does fit, then no worries, we'll just chop this off. But yeah, other things I've done is I've basically sorted the supports out. You can see now there's a batten running along there. You can see the structure at the end there to support this piece. That's all nice and strong. And under this side, it's got some bolts and wing nuts. So the actual track bed here is obviously higher than this level. So I think it works out where this line I put in here was the center point where it can be against the board, roughly. So I'm gonna cut with the multi-tool. I've done it on the top, so the top is cut to around here, and this lower piece, well, closer piece even, is only cut to around here at the minute, because I got here and then realised, hang on, I've got the point work to go in, so I need to actually get the points and try and loosely fit some track, because I might have to cut around here so that the track work can gradually rise. It's a bit of a pain doing all this, but there we are. My plan now, though, with this is, rather than build off of the baseboard, I think I'm actually instead going to have the baseboard raised up this end. So I'm basically going to make a load of spaces to go under the board. So this is just a 9mm bit of ply quickly chucked under there, and it's roughly the right sort of height. With that, you can see there. So that would be fine for coming out of the yard. It just tips a little because the weight of the spirit level's on there. But I think that's the sort of general idea. I think we'll be pretty good. This just gives you a little idea of the height difference then. It's actually quite a lot by the time you get down there, so it's quite amazing really. But when you consider how far it's had to go to drop that much, the incline starts right over in that corner, and then it goes all the way down and down here. That is a long way. So this is why they're not usually viable on a model railway. But there you go. I'm basically just trying to keep it as shallow as possible so it looks as good as it can, but with still being usable. So I'm now making the exterior piece for the higher level. As you can tell, we've got that side bit in now and all cut to size, and it's all in at this end. So we've got a bit here, and that screws through. It's all notched out to suit, and obviously it all sits sort of on there, and then that will obviously need to be doubled up this side. So I'm gonna have to cut another piece of this. That's gonna have to go down the side here, and that will then screw in to this batten, hopefully, fingers crossed, and then across there as well, and that will support that top piece. And I'll also obviously be able to screw into here, which will all sort of tie it all together and stop this piece moving. Fingers crossed that will do the job. That's the outside of the frame done then. It's all screwed and glued. It's all in position. It holds this in place as well, which is nice. And it's all screwed to the battens that support the top level. So this obviously can take a lot of weight because it's on battens either end. This is then screwed to this down there, you see. And then this piece is screwed and glued to this piece, and then screwed to the battens. So when I do the same on this side, I'm going to do basically the same as what I've done here, and then I can cut this piece out for the trains to go under. But as it stands, I'm quite happy with that. It looks like it's straight on from this piece, but it actually isn't. If you go straight on from here, you end up over there. So it's quite deceiving. However, I don't think it's actually noticeable, but it gives me a lot more space because you can have this little end piece. And as I say, in the future, if I want, I can extend that somewhat. You can just see there that it's at a bit of an angle. So all I'll do is I'll chop this off, and I'll probably put something here just to make it look a bit nicer. Either that, or I will cut this along and down so it just literally pokes out. That'd probably be a better way of doing it actually, which would look a bit neater. But it's pretty strong. I'm really pleased. I'm gonna leave just the one single support in the center. It seems strong enough to me as it is, and there's not going to be a massive amount going on there. Pretty much just a siding and maybe a point or something, I don't know, for like a loco siding up the top end, or a cripple siding, something like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, progress is good. So here's the baseboards almost done then. I'm fairly pleased with them. And I've laid some track roughly over the top to show you what the plan's going to be. So just to run you through, of course we've got the inclines up here. I've got to make the step down to this point because I've made this board here flat because this piece and this piece are on 2 different levels, so I'm going to do that individually to match up with these curves that will be here. So of course the train will come off the main line, it will come down under here, then it'll come round, it'll hit a curved right hand point where it will have the option of continuing down and under the incline. It'll go down the end there, and it'll come round in a circle, and it'll come back up this line here, then it'll come around this curve and back up towards the main line again. So basically it's just going to give us the option of hiding a couple trains, and one day in the future, of course, there will be a fiddle yard around the curve there. But yeah, that also gives you the option of coming down here with your train, get to the curve point, you can come across the curve point, across a single slip, and then up the head shunt, and then you can back your train into the yard that's going to be here. The limit's going to be around 10 wagons, so that'll do me though. That's long enough for a sort of small freight train. And then I'll have to mess about in here, see what I can do space wise. I might even make use of my little Jeeber F08 if I can. But yeah, then basically you'll try and sort the train out. I've got to come up with a way of working the yard so you can get your train back out with the loco at the right end. So you'll drag the train out up the head shunt again, and then you'll depart this way up towards the main line. So that is the general idea. You can see there we're going to have a left hand point. We'll have a single slip there so you can come in and you can come out. We don't need a double slip because there's no need to travel wrong direction up this line. However, not 100% on that. I might put a double slip in yet, I'm not sure, because it just gives you options of looping stuff around. I've not really made that decision yet, but we'll see. But yeah, I think once the track is all in there, that's going to look really cool with stuff curving round. Of course, if you come down here, you can't really see it too well actually. I thought I might be able to zoom in and show you a view, but it doesn't want to play ball, so never mind. Plan is to have a girder bridge or some sort of thing across here. I might use polystyrene to build the landform up a little more and then go across, but that's plan A. Plan B is actually to extend the town scene up here all the way across and have this all hidden. Obviously have this piece sticking out, but yeah, I was wondering whether to extend this out a little bit. It might be a bit drastic. Obviously it'll have to be in 2 halves so this can still come out, but that's something I really need to think about for the future. It'll be a lot of work because I'm going to change this so it's got a low relief platform, and then we could put the rest of the platform in, blah blah. But how far do you go? Do I just keep it as 2 separate scenes or extend this and go a bit mad? I don't know. I suppose I could have always leave that to you guys in the comments below. I'm always up for suggestions. But yeah, so I've been to see Anthony at AGR, got myself a couple of points for this little junction that's going to go in. However, they are obviously quite large and I'm very limited with space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these down slightly to try and condense it down as much as I can. So what I'll do, I'll get the Sharpie and I'll draw around it. And then I'm basically probably going to chop through sort of here on this one, up here on this one, chop a little bit off the end there, and then see what I can do with maybe putting slightly more of a bend on this point, and hopefully that will give us a little bit more room, as well as lobbing a bit off here probably as well, because obviously we've got the issue of this curve up here and obviously fitting enough spacing for the head shunt. So as it is, this was meant to be somewhere around there, and if it goes there, I don't know if we're going to get that curve in. I mean, I suppose I've got, I think that's a 3rd radius point, put that there, and it just doesn't really work. So this needs to be round further, and it also needs to be a bit further this way, which just that little bit would make all the difference, because you come around there and obviously straight on there, but then it throws stuff out this end, because obviously we've got to get another point in. So you want a short left hand point in this one here, and that's going to be for the head shunt. Basically we're just trying to, as I say, maximize the space with also being able to get the curve in there. The inner one isn't such a problem because I can take this up if needs be, which might happen, and I might reroute it a little wider and then have it curve in a bit sharper across here, Not 100% on that yet. That will be a last resort job. I don't really want to move this track if I don't have to, because it's all ballasted. It'll be a faff, but that's something that I can do if needs be. And I do need to adjust the height of this anyhow. It needs to come down a little more because it all doesn't sort of work. But I'm going to chop this down once I've drawn around it, and when we come back you'll see how much shorter I've hopefully made it. All right, there you go then. That's the points cut down between where they join up, and you can see I drew round where it sat originally. You can see the difference now. We've saved almost 1.5 inches this side. Where are we? Oh, 1.25 inches, sorry, on the right hand side there. And of course I can still lob a bit off here to give me just that little bit more room on the head shunt, and I could do the same here if I want, because obviously there's got to be a point going into this yard to split into two. So with a little bit also lobbed off there, I'll probably lose 1 sleeper, so 1 sleeper's worth off there. Then that will make it a lot easier to fit up here at the top. So if you look, if that goes roughly there, then we would have enough space by the time the curve goes in to actually meet up. So that would be fine as is now. It's just a case of maximising it, because obviously it's just got to be as compact as possible. So I'm going to keep tweaking it and we'll see how good we can get it. Right, the wood is all in. This is finally solid. That bit's solid. This bit I've got to make another support for the rear, but it's to a point where I can lay track if I need to. The rest of it I'm happy with. The gaps I will fill in soon, but I don't really need to, because I'm going to put probably a brick wall anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But now the task is work out where the junction is going to fit. Now the flat part where it crosses is here. That is ideally where I want this piece of track, where this crosses over onto the head shunt line. So we want this somewhere around there. If I actually find the Sharpie, it probably would pay to put a line there. Where is it? There, roughly. So if I put a dot there, then I know how far across I've got to come. Try and get rid of the Sharpie without drawing on myself. So the whole thing was, though, that I want the junction as far that way as possible, with it still being able to connect up there without having a nasty dog leg in it, and basically so that stuff will freely flow round. It's going to be a pig, because it's going to be like sort of within 0.5 centimetre kind of job to get this all right and to get it all to fit. This has to, of course, fit where this drops away. I dropped this bit away because this is the edge of the baseboard, so it just gives a little bit more strength having that there to the actual baseboard assembly underneath. And then this piece being separate, it's all good. So what I'll do is I'll probably build this back up again. It's either that or I gouge some of this out so it looks like it drops away, like there's a little stream or something like that. I'm not really sure yet, but we'll come to that at another point. But this is a 3rd radius curve going into the yard. This is a 2nd. There's no reason I can't use a 2nd here. It's only going to be wagons, so that would get us round. And yeah, basically it's just a lot of trial and error. This inner track will probably have to cut across here, so I'm going to have to do something with this, and this level's got to drop slightly anyway. But yeah, it's basically a lot of jiggling about, and I basically get the crossover in position, then work off of that. So we've got the position of the point work now. I'm quite happy with it. What I am going to have to do is alter this bit of track here so that it carries on at a slightly shallower angle, just so it can get around enough to lead into this point. Ignore the kink, that will be gone by the time the track's properly laid. So that will be mint, that's fine. That I've tested it with some Mark 3s, leads in nice, no derailments or anything, so that's cool. So you'll come across there and obviously into the head shunt. In the head shunt I've got 10 Dapol IOA wagons just sat here at the minute, just to give you an idea of a full length train. So 10 was the idea I was going with, obviously with a loco as well. I am going to build a bridge section which will hopefully flip down with the lift out piece and then butt up against there. So that would work fine. The idea operationally, because obviously you come in one way, you need to go out the other way, it means your loco is trapped at that end. What will happen is I did buy myself a Bachmann GBR F08. It's the only 08 I've ever driven in real life, so I do want to use it. So while the yard's empty, when there's a train due, the 08 will come out of the yard, it'll come up and it will sit in the head shunt right at the end up against the stops. The full train will then come in, 10 wagons, and obviously a 66 or 56, depending on what I'm using, or 60 when Cavalex bring that out. That will come right up to the 08. It will then back the train into both roads in the yard, and the loco will then sit on one of those roads. When the train's finished being loaded, the 08 will then bring out one of the portions, the portion that obviously has not got the 66 on. It will drag that portion out. Then the 66 will come out on its own and it will go back onto the empty road. The 08 will then push the wagons back in, couple them up, pull them all the way out into the head shunt again, and then the 66 will then be released onto the rear of the train, which then obviously becomes the front, and that means that you can go out the correct direction. So this is the sort of puzzle I've been trying to work out in my head, and I think it'll work nicely. It'll basically give someone down here something to do. One of my mates can mess about doing that while I'm chilling doing something else, or vice versa. Just gives you a nice bit of operational interest. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Also, ignore this point, by the way. I was messing around seeing about potentially using this side for some sort of up and over for a run round for the loco instead. But I think we're going to sack that off and simplify it. It saves us a point there. The other option was to put a left-hand point here so that you could have a small road here, enough for just the loco and maybe a fueling point. But realistically, it's just too much of the space, and again, saves me a point and a point motor. So I think that's going to be the best option. That's going to work nicely. And as I say, we'll put the bridge piece in. So I'm glad I extended this out. And once that flips down, the bridge will be in place, and then you simply drive your 66/08 over a bit. I'll make it a little bit longer so I can fit an extra 1 or 2 wagons in if needs be, and I'll be pretty pleased with that. So that's most of the track glued down now. I've even put the 2 yard lines in. As you can see, they go right up to the end there. The glue is obviously still wet, hence it's white. I'm actually using Gorilla wood glue for this, which is what I used on some of the rest of the layout. Because it dries fairly quick, it's got a decent grab on it. It saves me waiting 2 days for PVA. But yeah, I think those sidings are going to be plenty long enough. I've gone one slightly longer than the other, just to mix it up a bit. You do see that in the real world. I'm fairly happy with that. So I'm going to chuck the train of IOA ballast wagons in and see how much I can fit with a loco. I'll do that in a second. But yeah, obviously this line is now in. I've rolled some coaches down it, and it seems fairly smooth. It does seem to drop off a little more here, so it picks up a little more speed just as it goes under the bridge, but it's not too bad. Obviously, again, I'm going to work this out soon. I'm going to do the rest for now, and then I'll come to this after, because I might have to pull some of it up. We've got this line in, going underneath. This line is in as well, up to here. The next piece is just laid, ready for me to tackle. And as you can see, I've got half of the head shunt in as well. So yeah, I'm going to chuck these wagons over here and see how many I can fit in. There you go then, that is 15 wagons in the yard. Now, I don't know if I'll make the head shunt long enough to accommodate this many wagons, to be honest. Probably look at about sort of 12 or 13. But just to prove it does fit. The only issue is I've underestimated on the curves the swing of the loco. So it just touches the centre of the loco as it swings round. Now the loco has to sit on one of these roads out the way so that the 08 can come back and pull one rake out, and then the loco go back to get out of the way of the next rake so that you can shuffle it all about. So I'm going to have to sort something out with that. It's either that, or, as I say, if I make it so that only sort of 12, 13 wagons fit, then the loco would be around there somewhere off the curve, and we'll just obviously be able to paint on the clearance point. So that's another way around it, but all in good time. But yeah, I'm pleased with that. That's 15 wagons. That's going to fit nicely. And I'm pleased with how the track sits. There we go then. The track is now all down on this section, apart from this one piece, which I need to lay. I've worked it out now. It's going to sit roughly here. So I'm going to have to IPA all this so it comes loose, and then obviously skew it over, basically to make this curve as shallow as possible. But really pleased with how it's looking. It's also all laid in here. I'm going to get some copper clad sleepers because I've run out to go on the end pieces here. There's just a screw on each piece, just sort of lightly screwed down to keep them in the right position. It's got a nice sweep to it, so it'll be a nice gentle S-bend as stock comes around. It's going to look really good, and obviously I will build it so it's like a sort of brick wall going down, and then it'll go through, and then it'll be off scene, so that'll be fine. But I think that looks really cool. The obvious thing is what to do with tying in the baseboard behind. I'm still not sure whether I want to bring the scenery of it out or just leave it as two separate scenes altogether and just live with it. I can't really decide. I think bringing the scenery out is probably going to look a little bit weird because of how far down the ground drops, but I'm not 100% sure. We will see. But yeah, yard's all laid as well, of course. We've got a nice amount of wagons in there at the minute, just to show we can fit a decent length train. That's 12 wagons with a 59 and an 08, and it all fits. I could get another probably 2 wagons at a push, because the 08 doesn't need to sit there, it can sit out of the way. So yeah, really pleased with that too. That's perfect sort of length. The only reason I've stuck the 59 there is just if you had the situation where the loco was going out double-headed, but it was coming in singular, you could bring the train in. You'd bring the light engine in first when the yard's empty, then bring the train in on top of it, and I just wanted to prove that it would all fit. So yeah, pleased with that. So I'm pretty pleased with this new area now. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. It's a bit long-winded, as always with me. I think the plan now, the next sort of plan of action with all this, apart from get that piece of track in, which I'll do at some point, is going to be to ballast it, I suppose. All the dropper wires are in. I've got to chuck the bus wires in underneath and then ballast it all, see how it's looking, and then go from there, starting the scenery. Whether I do that first or do this top area, I'm not 100% sure. I guess you'll have to wait and see in the next video. But as for now, thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button, like and share it, all that if you fancy, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.